friends. Ryan Aho here, the one and only Bert Lehman. Got to be honest with you, not really thinking your apparel's all that great. Is that a vintage Aaron Rodgers hoodie? Like, is he going to be a Packer? Not going to be a Packer? Is it the age of? Is it Jordan Love time? A lot of craziness. March is among us, right? We had the Minnesota State High School hockey tournaments. We got March Madness. We got free agency right going on in the NFL, and we also have racing season.
Well, the calendar may say March, but it feels more like January around here. We've had over 20 inches of snow in the month of March already.
It's crazy. Up in Duluth, Minnesota, at the Miller Hill Mall, the freaking
roof
about that. It's like, really? And Troy Powers, right? He's got his business in there. He's got the Troy Powers and Associates eye care business there. Hopefully there's no damage there. I'm not really sure, but you'd think, right, that the people that own the mall would be like, hey, we got a lot of snow this year. Let's get somebody on there to remove some of the snow. That's just me, right? But I guess they found out the hard way. Superior got a bunch of snow, but you're right. I mean, with that said, March always gets cold, always has snow, but after March comes April, and April is racing season in our area. Knock on wood, right? We'll knock on wood here. But I'm looking forward to that. That just means we're a little closer. But, we're going to bring you episode number 168 here. Of course, brought to you by our friends over at Dirt Track Supply, Watertown, South Dakota. Ron, Trevor, and the gang. It's that time of year. Racing right around the corner. I know you need parts. I know you need tires. You probably need safety equipment. You probably need a new helmet. There's stuff that you need, right? You might need bumpers, fab work, body work, whatever. Hopefully you don't need a new chassis in March, right? But if you do, the Aero chassis has won a lot of races over the years. So get a hold of them, guys. But Ron and Trevor do such a great job for racing. Just thanks for their support and thanks for all they do for the sport and for our show here. So give them guys a call. They'll take good care of you for everything racing. Dirt Track Supply over in Watertown, South Dakota. But on today's show, Bert, some fan feedback. Got a couple good ones. Got a couple fun things here we're going to do. Fan questions there. Also, it's clear to me, right, that last year, J.R. Smith and Ashton Winger, they kind of were married together for a little while, and then they had an ugly divorce. And we weren't really sure. Was this a good breakup, not a good breakup? Bert, I think it's pretty clear that they might not have left on good terms. And for sure, they're not on good terms now. We'll touch on that in a little bit. Dirt late model drivers, a couple of them invading different ranks in NASCAR. We'll talk a little bit about that. Our picks, bold predictions. We got some fun stuff to talk about. But first, Bert, before we get into anything, a little bit of a tribute, right? There's, as people know, you probably heard about it already, but we lost a guy in dirt late model racing, Arnie Ranta. And Arnie Ranta was a guy passionate, absolutely passionate about racing. Unique, right? He's a unique character. He was. But I think, honestly, to have that kind of money and throw that kind of money around, you got to be a little bit unique, right? You just have to. That's just the way it is. But if you think about it, right, there's not a lot of guys out there that are willing to take everything they have and just throw it at different racers in the racing world. There's a lot of people that sponsor. We're thankful for the sponsors of the show. I had a lot of great sponsors in racing. But this guy gave a lot of money to a lot of people to help further their careers, right? And quite honestly, what did he get out of it? Satisfaction. Got to be part of something. Some of the drivers this guy sponsored, Jeff Provenzino up in Hibbing, Joel Kreiderman, sponsored him up north of the border when Kreiderman won the Rumble, the B1 bomber, Brent Larson, Brian Shirley, Hammer Down, Jason Round. I think, did he also sponsor Terry Casey at one point too?
Oh yeah, he was a huge sponsor of Terry. I thought he was. When Terry Casey went national, he was a huge sponsor on that car.
And he really liked the open stuff a lot better than the Wasota stuff. And he made that clear. He wasn't a huge fan of kind of some of the ways Wasota was doing stuff, and he's passionate. He's been a big supporter of Brent Larson, for quite a number of years. And I know that for a while there, he owned Brent stuff, and I think he was a sponsor to the very end. But, it's a tough deal. I got to know him as well. I drove Provenzino's late model one year. Of course, he sponsored that. So, and he was around all of my tracks. So, thoughts and prayers to the friends, family, all the people involved with Arnie Ranta. And man, he won't be forgotten. And I hope that the World of Outlaws does some kind of tribute for him, right? Because, he was one of the big sponsors. I mean, let's face it, there's less than 10 regular drivers the last couple of years in the World of Outlaws. And he was a primary sponsor or one of the primary sponsors for one of those drivers. So hopefully the World of Outlaws does something for him. And I think that he needs to be recognized for all he's done for this sport. So any memories there of Arnie on your end over there in Eastern Wisconsin? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, our condolences to the family. I never met Arnie Ranta and never really interacted with him. So I really don't have any personal memories. I just know that he was a huge supporter of racing. You would see his name on a lot of cars. So you knew he was a big supporter.
He was, and Finlander guy. So I mean, obviously, I liked him. Finlander. Jeff Erickson likes him too. So, but yeah, it's thoughts and prayers to him and his family, and let's move on. Speaking of the past, there, let's go to a blast of the past. Of course, brought to you by Impact Health Sharing. So, if you're a small business owner, if you're self-employed, if you pay for your own health care, whether you're a farmer, truck driver. Maybe you're an employee, you work for somebody, but they don't provide healthcare, so you need to get it for yourself. If you feel like you're paying too much, you're not happy with what you have, shoot me a text, 218-969-1380. Hit me up on Facebook or whatever. I can get you a quick quote, no obligation, get you some information. But the company's Impact Health Sharing. And Bert, it's been great. I mean, it's saved people a lot of money that they can put that money towards something else, like, I don't know, racing would be good, right? But you can go to any doctor. There's a lot of great benefits. But again, if it's something that you're not happy with what you have, hit me up. I'll see if maybe I can help you. But episode 168. And 60. I don't have any 168s. Do you have 168?
I do not have a 168.
How about a 68?
I do not have a 68 either.
I'm quizzing you here. I'm going to quiz you. Okay, I want you to think that. And when I think 68, right? There's one driver. I got a couple here, but I got one.
I just thought of it. Well, go on.
All right. So you've been over to the Punky Manor Challenge of Champions multiple times over there with MJ and so on. And there's a family that when I think Red Cedar Speedway, this family is at the forefront. Who do you got?
Prochnow family.
There you go. Bert, you're on it.
Well,
you're on
it just popped into my head before you said that.
Absolutely. So Ron Prochnow, I believe Mike's his kid. I'm pretty positive Mike's his kid. And Larry had a couple boys that ran modifieds, but Ron and Larry, brothers, they race forever. And I tell you what, heavily involved with all aspects of the sport. Ron, I mean, I remember back from the early 80s, it was the Steer, I think Supper Club. I think it was a steakhouse or whatever in Menominee. I literally remember the blue car. It said the Steer 68. I mean, he was a good runner back in the day. Don't know a ton of stats about him, but I do remember that he was excellent race car driver. Of course, the Prochnow legacy, right? You got Larry Prochnow raced, and then of course both of their kids, have raced. I believe Mike. Somebody can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Mike is his kid, and he's won a lot of races on the late model as well. But further than that, Bert, the Prochnows, as a family, the entire family, they've been heavily involved, right, over at the Red Cedar Speedway for years. Right. They were on the board. They helped run the racetrack. I mean, so it's not just what he did in the car, but that family as a whole, that Prochnow family, when I think Red Cedar Speedway, they're one of the first people that come to mind as the Prochnows. Good guess on that one. So I'm gonna stick with Wisconsin. Superstock guy. I ran against this guy just a handful of times. He mostly ran over in Rice Lake, but Scott Miller, he had a Gaber Signs lettered cars, always had really sharp looking race cars. Kurt did a great job on those. But Scott Miller, a guy that comes to mind from the Rice Lake area. And if anybody has stories about these drivers that we're mentioning, post them, right? Put it in the comments, right? Text us if you don't want to share the comments. If you have pictures that you're like, hey, check this out. We like to hear that stuff. Another super stock guy I have, Bert, when I first started back in the early 90s and throughout the 90s, this guy was an absolute rocket ship at Cedar Lake and over at it's changed names, but St. Croix Falls, Centuria, Capella Speedway, all whatever you want to call it this week. But Doug Gustafson, I don't know if you remember that name, but he ran supers and then he transitioned into mods. This guy was up on the wheel, banging the boards, fun to watch, super good guys, and really had a fun time racing against this guy. Back in the day, he usually whooped the shit out of me. He usually whooped my ass. He was pretty quick back in the day. And then our friend, a friend of the show, Danny Nesbitt, Dan's Auto Body over in Duluth, he sent me one, him and Lauren, and they said, hey, we got one here. We got Dan Larson. And did you print that out?
Yes, I did.
I told him, I said, I remember Dan. He was a pure stock guy. He ran up in Proctor, a little bit in Superior. So I remember him. I don't remember a lot about him, but I'll let you read that off there. I told Danny, I told Lauren and Danny, I said, send me a story about this guy. I mean, it's kind of fun to hear these stories. So I'll let you go ahead. What did you write there?
It says this car was 2007, and Dan wanted to put it in the DECC car show. He did get best in class at the show. A bunch of us had a mess of a time in this car. If I remember correct, the roof picture is the night before. It had to be at the DECC at 10 or 11 a.m. the next day. Dan was worried his car had too much orange and people would call it the pumpkin car. In the years after.
So Bert, I'm gonna pause you there. I don't know if you saw the pictures, but they painted a big pumpkin on the roof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the DECC is the deck. That we call that the deck. That's where the Bulldogs played for years. It's a Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, but we call that the deck in Duluth.
Okay. And in the years after, he wouldn't let me put much orange on the car. It's like 4:30 Wednesday, and Dan leaves to go pick up his graphics and grab his wife and stepson. He walks out, and his brother Scott and Eric tell me they need black plastic. I asked what kind, like a black garbage bag, and they told me they had a plan. Ha ha. So they cut these out and put water on the roof and took a squeegee to make it lay down. Dan walks in all proud to show his wife and sees this. He was pissed, and everyone else got a good laugh out of it. A year or two later, he goes to Ashland for the big pure stock race and won it. I talked to him the next day at like 10 a.m. to see how it went. He said he won, but he got torn down and didn't get home until 3 a.m. He's in a panic because Proctor races tonight. He is first or second in the points with a race or two left for points. He didn't have gaskets or a torque wrench, not to mention he gets his engines built. So he never put them together. I called Rob Monahan, and he said he would grab gaskets and meet me at Dan's. We got the car together so they could get rained out before the start. Haha. Remember them days? He ended up finishing second in points, and that happened several years at Proctor and Superior. And that's
Bert, you ever have those days when you're working with MJ? I know that I had many of those days where you're slaving, you broke something the night before, you're working like a dog, and you get everything all ready, and then they cancel, right? Or you get to the
track. One time MJ blew a motor at Anigo on Friday night, so the race Saturday night in Shawano, he didn't have a spare motor. His engine company was NVR Racing Engines out of Milwaukee area. So one of the crew members drove down. He took the blown engine down to NVR and they didn't necessarily have a great engine as a replacement. They had an asphalt engine that we put in the car, and then Shawano got rained out.
And then you probably had to take it back out of the car.
Right.
Of course, that always happens. So thanks guys for for sending that story. It's fun hearing that kind of stuff. And let's get into a little fan feedback. Go ahead.
I did think the one national driver I believe he was number 68, Tim Hitt.
I think you're right. I remember that name. I remember the car, but we'll see if we can find a picture. Troy's probably got one on the 2020 racing history page. We'll see if maybe we can hijack one off of there and share it on the show. So, little fan feedback. This has kind of been a fun segment. We got, so if you're a fan of the show, you listen every week. If you have a question, if you have a thought, if you have something like, hey, touch on this, touch on that, you can message me or Bert. You can message the show. You can text us, however you want, email us, whatever you want to do, get a hold of us. It's always fun kind of having a little feedback here. But so before we get into that, I want to give a little shout out here. BuyRaceShirts.com. More and more people are getting into apparel, which we'll touch on that in a second, right? But more and more drivers are getting into apparel, whether it's hats, hoodies, T-shirts. I mean, you name it, right? You get a hold of the folks over at BuyRaceShirts.com, for racers, by racers, Jordan Tollefson over in Montevideo, and they'll take good care of you. They have a ton of different ways that you can purchase, whether you want small quantities, big quantities, whether you want something like kind of basic or something super high tech and just extravagant looking. Whatever you want, they can fit your needs at BuyRaceShirts.com. Give them a check out, and you'll be glad you did. So, I got a couple here from Brent, and it's pretty cool. Brent sends us stuff, pretty frequently. So I'm gonna ask you this question, and then I have a thought or two as well. But he had a good question here when it comes to apparel, right? Because a lot of race fans, they like to get apparel from their favorite drivers, right? Whether it's a hat, a shirt, whatever it may be, and this could be on a local level or even on a national level, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. With shows lasting till midnight, I mean, even if it's 11, midnight, sometimes 1, 2 in the morning, right? Needless to say, shows are lasting longer than they should in a lot of cases. How can racetracks help drivers with their at-track merchandise sales? And not only help drivers, but help fans, because fans want this stuff, but they can't go down and even see their drivers. What do you think they can do to help her?
Well, first of all, in eastern Wisconsin, there's no show lasting till midnight because I think pretty much every track has a curfew. But to get back to the question, I mean, I guess you could allow drivers to set up ahead of time in a certain area at the races and sell merchandise. Doing stuff like that.
Most drivers, though, right? I mean, unless it's a multi-day event or whatever, but when you have these standalone, like there's a 2-day swing for the World of Outlaws, right? Or Lucas Oil or whatever it is, maybe it's 2 different tracks. A lot of times they're rolling in, racing, gone, getting to the next track. So a lot of times they might, some of the travelers have souvenir trailers, right? But a lot of the drivers, they don't really have that. Like, I mean, if you want to get a shirt, I'll talk Brent Larson, right? If you want to get a B1 Bomber shirt, he doesn't typically have, I don't know if he's ever had a merchandise trailer, but he has shirts, he has apparel. You got to go down to the pits. You got to go in the pits. You got to get one from him or Mel. Well, a lot of drivers are that way. I remember in Hibbing, Bert, when the World of Outlaws came in, it was a 1-day, a weekday swing, and they were going somewhere else the next day. That was one of the biggest complaints. I was on the board at the time. My dad was president of the track. One of the biggest complaints we got is we couldn't even get down in the pits to meet these guys, right? We couldn't even get apparel. We couldn't meet them. I think opening up the pits beforehand, right? I mean, most promoters, Bert, they look at the race program as they're a racer. They're looking at it from the back gate angle, right? Well, fans, right? You don't need to charge a freaking pit pass. You don't need to charge a pit pass price, right? For a fan to go down in the pits for an hour before the races, take a handful of pictures, get a shirt, whatever, and then get back up in the grandstands and watch the races. You don't need to charge that. There's a lot. I mean, you look at NHRA, the pit pass price and the grandstand price, it's the same thing. It's the same ticket. So we don't. I think opening it up to where people can go down and mingle right beforehand. I used to do that as a kid. That was one of my favorite things in the world. My dad, we'd go down to Cedar Lake, right? My dad, we'd go down maybe USA Nationals in the early days, or if they had any kind of special there, and I would beg them. I'm like, let's go in the pits. And you had to buy a pit pass at the time, but we'd go down in the pits and we'd walk around and I'd take pictures of cars because I was that dorky kid with a camera. Now I'm just a dorky kid in general, right? But I was a dorky kid with a camera, and I'd walk around and I'd get pictures and I'd get all my stuff beforehand because so many people came down afterwards. And that was something that made me fall in love with racing because the drivers are also in a little bit more of a laid back mode to some extent, right? Because after the races, if they got stuff tore up, the last thing they want to do is deal with people, right? So I think the best thing they could do, Brent, is open up the pits beforehand and let people down before. Any other thoughts on that, Bert? Because that was a good question.
No, I agree with that. That's one thing that Eldora does. When I go there for the World 100, you pay for your grandstand ticket, but if you want a pit pass, you just have to pay, I don't know, $5-10 more, and you can get a pit pass and you have all access to the pits. And I don't know if the USA at Cedar Lake did this in prior years for the USA Nationals, but I did that last year too at Cedar Lake. I think it was like $5 extra per day if you wanted to go into the pits. And it's like,
yeah, if it's only $5, I'm cool with that. But when you look at like a regular race night, right? Let's say let's bring this back to weekly racers, because there's weekly racers that have apparel too. So let's bring this back to weekly racers. It's very common for a grandstand price to be $12 or $15, some as low as $10 to get in the grandstands, and then $30 to get in the pits. They ain't gonna pay $15 extra per person, literally, to just walk around the pits for an hour before the races. I think that I get it. They're looking at it like, oh, that back gate money, we got to have that money. No, you don't. You promote. Like if they build that culture and they just kind of let people mingle back and forth, that's going to be a big thing for racing. But we'll see if any tracks take on to it, because they definitely need to. So speaking of apparel, another thing on apparel. So a while back, someone had a vintage Grove Creek Speedway jacket. Now, shout out Jeff and Carl, right? They both worked at the Grove Creek Speedway. Jeff was a tech guy. Don Eisens told me he was a dickhead as a tech guy. That's a story for another day. I thought he was great. Don Eisens didn't like him. Carl actually got hit by a car while they were wheel packing. The sun was in the driver's eyes, hit him, landed on his head on the hood pin stud, was in the hospital for a long time. It was a bad deal. But the memories it brought back were better than those memories. Let's just say that. He said seeing some of that old vintage stuff brought back some memories. Bert, in all your years of racing, what sticks out to you? Is there anything where you look at apparel, whether it's jackets, hoodies, of a certain track that you're like, that is iconic? That brings me back. Like, is there a specific thing you remember as far as apparel from years back?
Hey, Remy. Well, this is how we rocked it in the 80s.
Nice. Nice, Sean. I like it. God dang, Bert, I wish I would have kept some of my old racing shirts, because I had some pretty cool ones, and I wore them out in the shop. I wish I had them. That's pretty cool. There you go. So Brent, there's an example.
It's funny that this topic comes up now, because Brad Lipke, the promoter at Toronto Speedway, posted something on Facebook this morning, stating something to the effect, we need to have a retro night at the races. And he sent me a text late today, and he said that the interest in a retro night is just unbelievable. So it's probably going to happen at Toronto Speedway this year. So
is that apparel or bodies, or what are we talking?
Well, he was talking apparel, and then I said, well, I think there should be a contest for the drivers to do retro graphic schemes. And so we'll see what happens on that. I mean,
Sure.
I love the history of racing and I love retro stuff, so I'm all for it.
That's a pretty cool thing that I've seen multiple years in a row. Shawano, there's always somebody, it seems like, that has a throwback body on, right? It's pretty cool. Jeff Provenzino did that last year with a Bob Girardi body, a throwback to when he won the Labor Day Shootout in '84. They had a whole bunch of Bobby G apparel there. But on the driver's side, absolutely fantastic. On the fan side, that retro night, bring back something from the '70s, '80s, an old jacket, an old hat, an old shirt, an old whatever. I'm all for it too. I think that would be super, super cool. And then tie in some kind of contest, right? Have the fans come down. Let's get a picture of you, get people down in victory, whatever. Get the fans involved, get it on social media, because I would like to see some of them old shirts and old apparel as well. So I think that was a good idea. And another quick question he had, not related to apparel. So he was talking about track records, right? And he's talking, and I don't really pay attention to swimming or track and field or whatever, like the Olympics. I like the Olympics, but I don't pay much attention. But he said that it seems like world records and stuff are just getting beaten at a high pace, right? World record, new world record, new world record. But in racing, some of the track records are like old, 20 years old. And he's like, why is that? Why aren't the track records getting beat, like with all this technology and stuff? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, you can have all the technology in the world, but if the track's not prepared in a way to be fast, you're not going to break, the time trial record. The way drivers like tracks these days, they don't want it real fast. So you're not going to see, you're not necessarily going to see the records fall, those types of records anyway.
I agree. I mean, like I said, they used to sell mud scrapers, believe it or not,
Right.
at the racetrack. You know that as well as I do. They don't do that. So tracks are drier. Swimming pools, incidentally, I don't think they're drier. I think they're just as wet as they've always been. So they kind of have an even playing field. So I think a lot of it has to do with track conditions for sure. And I got one more here from Nick. This one's going to be kind of fun. So with all the history in dirt track racing, and there's a lot of it, right? I mean, which I love the racing history. You love the racing history, and we're kind of nostalgic in that way. Are there certain names, like when I say a track, bam, I say whatever racetrack, for certain racetracks, is there like names that automatically just come to mind the minute you name it? Well, we're going to find out, because we're going to do a little word association game here, Bert. Okay. Now, we each listed a lot of tracks, and we'll see how long it takes. We might not go through all of them here, but we listed a lot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to name a track, and then I want you to name, bam, the first driver that comes to mind, and maybe just a quick little tidbit why, and I'll start with this. We'll give you a nice easy, some low-lying fruit, right? Shawano.
Well, it's actually three names that come to mind when I think of Shawano, and that's McBride, Anvelink, and Parker. Those were the three drivers that dominated the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s. And I think it's because of those three drivers that there's a lot of people went to the races to watch those three drivers compete against each other.
Yeah, without question. So we can alternate back and forth. I think you have a list there too.
Grand Rapids
Speedway. Oof. That's an interesting one. So when I think Grand Rapids Speedway, I tell you what, I'm gonna have to go with Brokings. All the way back to John Broking, Bob Broking, Johnny Broking. I mean, 3 generations of race car drivers, and there's going to be a 4th generation not so far down the road. But as long as I can remember, the Broking family has been a staple over at the Grand Rapids Speedway. Okay. I'm going to go, we'll stay local for you here. Let's go Plymouth.
Plymouth. I guess I would have to go with probably. I mean, I'm going to go with Tim Bueller actually, because
Okay.
that's where he got his start racing, and then he ventured over to Shawano Speedway later on in his career. Then he went back to Plymouth when they added late models there.
Okay, so Tim Bueller. All right, what do you got for me?
Oh, let's go. Puka should be on here. Let's go with Hibbing.
Should.
Which
one?
Hibbing.
Bob Girardi. When I think Hibbing Raceway, and there's a lot. I mean, I grew up there, right? That was my stomping grounds, forever. But I think the godfather of Kelly Lake Racing, Bob Girardi he's the Hibbing Raceway. He was one of the first board members, might have been the first president. I'm not positive of the Iron Range Racing Association, but first ballot Hall of Famer. And I'm gonna go non-racer too, because I think back to my childhood. And if you would have asked me a non-racer, Freddie Fram, the voice of the Hibbing Raceway and many other tracks up there. But when I think Hibbing Raceway as a kid, it was Bob Girardi, Freddie Fram. Those are the two.
Okay.
I'm going to go. This might be a curveball for you, possibly. Used to be a soda track. Sunnyview Speed Zone in Oshkosh.
I'm going to go with Brian Drexler. He was a IMCA modified driver, and the reason I'm going with him is he was from the Oshkosh area, so he was one of the few drivers who was actually from that town. And I can't remember if he had an open trailer, but he didn't have any big fancy rig or anything. He pulled his race car with a pickup truck, and he may have had an enclosed trailer, but it wasn't anything too fancy.
Nice. But a racer, a race, right? Kind of that old school type deal. I like it. No, let's go a little bit national here.
Hey, you want me to ask you one?
Oh yeah, let's do that. I'm sorry.
Brown County Speedway in Aberdeen, South Dakota.
It's showtime. Kent Arment. When I think Brown County, I think Kent Arment. I mean, he's kind of the human highlight reel of South Dakota. I think he's the winningest driver in the state of South Dakota. Multi-time national champion between the late model and the modified. Was really quick. Limited schedule, but he was super fast last year. If only he could remember how much his car is supposed to weigh, he would have made more money last year. Have a little fun with that. But Kent Arment, when I think Brown County, it is definitely the number 9.
And see, when I think Brown County, I think Joe Kreiderman, because he won the Rumble like every year.
He once or twice for sure. Yeah, he was good out there. Lance Matthews was good. Yeah, but yeah, definitely Arment for me. So let's do this. I'm going to go on a national level here, and I am going to go a little curveball for you. Williams Grove Speedway.
Well, I'm not real familiar with a lot of the drivers' names, but I mean, the Pennsylvania Posse obviously is what I think of. Did I ever tell you about when I went to a Brewers game and I was tailgating?
I don't think so.
Yeah, this was probably at least 5 years ago. And I was at a Brewer game with some friends, and we were tailgating, and the people parked next to us were talking about the Pennsylvania Posse. So then we started talking racing.
By far, in my opinion, the biggest rivalry in dirt track racing as a whole is the Pennsylvania Posse versus the World of Outlaws. And I think that, I mean, for sure, I can go with it. What do you got for me?
All right. This is kind of a national scene track. I don't even think it's a track anymore, though. But Owatonna.
The Gopher 50, huh? Owatonna Gopher 50. I'm gonna say Steve Wetstein. Okay. And I think it was a modified. And the only reason I think that I only been to Owatonna a couple times, but I believe it was Owatonna, and the story kind of coincides where I think he got knocked out and like literally went like wide open, either into the infield or out of the track or whatever, and the car was still running. I remember hearing stories about a Steve Wetstein crash, and I believe it was over at Owatonna. If somebody has a little info on that, exactly what happened there, share it. But I'm gonna go with Wetstein on that one. I'm gonna go Cedar Lake Speedway.
I would have to go with Rick Eggersdorf. He's a legend there. And did you do your interview with him yet?
This week.
Okay, I was gonna tell you, write this down. Ask him about winning the World of Outlaw show at Shawano Speedway in 1989.
Ooh, 1989 Shawano. Okay. Got her. Will do. I'm excited for that. Mason Aaron's videos, who does our editing, is going to make a trip over, and we're going to have a little sit down in the afternoon on Sunday with Rick Eggersdorf and reminisce a little bit. Of course, Hall of Famer, dirt late model Hall of Fame. He's going to be inducted this year, or South 100. So super excited. And I would agree. When I think Cedar Lake Speedway, it's Rick Eggersdorf for me too.
All right. How about ABC Raceway in Ashland?
When I think ABC Raceway in Ashland, I think AJ Folt. There's a lot. I mean, Brandon Kopp's going to be mad at me because I should say Don Kopp, SpaceX, right? But I think AJ Folt, because as a kid, I've been a super stock guy forever. And I remember the A1 car. I remember Lane Gann, his engine builder, right? He was always there helping him. And his daughter, Lane's daughter was really good friends, Jen, with my sister. But AJ Folt, them A1 cars that he was absolutely rocket fast in them. And then he tore the fence down at Superior one night, rolling it over. But when I think ABC Raceway, AJ Folt's the name for me.
Okay.
Should we do a couple more or what?
Couple more.
Let me take a look. Which one do I want to go with here? Eldora.
I was waiting for that one. I would have to say Scott Bloomquist. First trip I ever made to Eldora Speedway was to the Dream in 2004, I believe. And Bloomquist won that race. And normally, the friend that I go to the races with at Eldora, we would sit in because he used to get the tickets from Bloomquist. It was the Bloomquist section. So those people were just diehards. And like the year that Bloomquist crashed in hot laps and didn't compete, a lot of those fans just left. If they couldn't watch Scott Bloomquist, they weren't going to stay.
That is great. And I mean, whether it was winning big races or controversy or whatever happened, for sure. Incidentally, I got my ass chewed here this week because my right hand man, Jim, my fit guy forever, we've had this debate forever. It wasn't really a debate because we've always been on the same side of it. Like I used to always say, Billy Moyer won, Scott Bloomquist 2, right? And then I got to looking at stats, and I'm like, I don't know, but Bloomquist won. He's like, what the hell is wrong with you? He goes, I'm pretty sure I looked online and I saw somewhere where Moyer on head-to-head competition had like 50 more wins than Bloomquist when they were head-to-head. I don't know if that's true. If you can find it, maybe let me know. But he wasn't real happy. He's like, it's Bloomquist number 2 behind Mr. Smooth. He goes, there's a lot of reasons, but you got that one wrong, he said. So what do you got for me?
All right. I am going to give you, Fairbury.
When I think Falls, when I think Fairbury, I think Bobby Pierce. Even though he hasn't won the Prairie Dirt Classic, right? It's like Dale Earnhardt at the Daytona 500, right? Just snake bit. But for me personally, my favorite person to watch get around that place is Bobby Pierce. He's banging the boards. He is absolutely a rocket ship. He's going to win the Prairie Dirt Classic this year. But Bobby Pierce at Falls, baby. All right, one more here, Bert. One more. Let's see. I'm going to try to figure out which one I want here. You know what? I'm gonna throw that. Well, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not. You gave me that one. Let's go East Bay.
I'll probably go with Billy Moyer for that, just from the olden days.
We are getting old.
But he was always traveling around, and he was always at that race. So I'll take Moyer on that one.
He was everywhere.
Yeah.
I'll say one last one for me, huh?
Yep, one last one for you. I will give you Knoxville.
Danny Lasowski, the dude, Danny Lasowski. And I remember for years, I mean, he ran there, I think, pretty much weekly for a long time, but he was so smooth, and then he was in the Tony Stewart, the JD Byriders, number 20. But I remember the dude, Danny Lasowski, getting around that place. What is it? Scruff, Bobby Allen, that Knoxville Nationals he won, go-karting around the bottom. But when I think Knoxville, the first name that comes to mind in years past, that is Danny the Dude Lasowski. So that was kind of fun. I mean, we got a lot of tracks listed down. We can maybe do that again at one of these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But let's switch gears. Late model racing this past weekend. Little recap, a lot of drama. And before we get into that, right here, right, one of the products, Brad Parson Egg Solutions. So if you're a farmer, right, if you're in North Dakota, South Dakota, Western Minnesota, the snow is going to melt. I promise. It's going to melt. It's going to go away, right? Hopefully the North Dakota folks, they got a really late start last year, Bert. Hopefully the snow melts so they don't get that late start. But with that said, okay, this is a time of year you need to be calling Brad, because he has lots of different products, right? Stuff that you can mix with your current spray packages for all the seasons. If you want to increase your yields, if you want to be more profitable, if you just want everything to be better, he has great products. They've been tested. He has the data. Why not, right? There's a lot of different a lot of different fertilizer companies, spray stuff out there, a lot of different chemicals. Why not go with a guy that's a racer, that supports racing, that is a racer? Why not do that? And his number, 320-219-3542. So Brad Parson, I mean, we know, Bert, we know this for sure, that the right chemicals applied properly get you better results. That don't matter if it's on tires, in your different lubricants, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Or if it's on your spray packages for farming, get the right chemicals, get a hold of Brad. Now, the big drama, right? So there's a double header. I think it was a bash at the beach, I think is what they called it. It's a double header. We'll start with the Southern Raceway. Now, we talked about this, right? Provenzino posted and Joseph Joyner did that deal from when Provo was down there with the crate car. Like some dude got hit in the head with a shovel like 8 times and got thrown in jail. I mean, these guys are flat out like lunatics. I mean, there's something in the water down there. Not sure what it is, okay? But that deal, did you see that whole deal with Ashton Winger and J.R. Smith?
I saw all the on-track stuff. I didn't see all the off-track stuff except Winger sitting down, getting handcuffed, and then hauled away.
Yeah, and I'll post. We got a little bit of a video clip that we can post, on the show. So if you're listening to it, we'll have it. You can watch it on here. Maybe Puka can share it, just a short of it.
But I mean, as far as the on-track stuff, I don't know why. Well, I mean, obviously there's bad blood between Winger and G.R. Smith.
Let's start here, because some fans may not have seen what happened. Okay. So on night number, I think it was night number 2, right? That was night. I think that was night number 2.
Yeah, I think that was night 2 when all hell broke loose.
Yeah, it was because Ashton Winger won night number 1. Okay, so night number 2, the first lap, right? Ashton Winger comes in the corner, turn number 1. G.R. Smith throws a haymaker slider. Clean, borderline clean. It was aggressive, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say slammed is too aggressive of a word, but I mean,
Yeah.
he door slammed him a little bit.
Yeah. It was aggressive for sure. But it's Ashton Winger. He did the same thing. They come in the next corner, right? Ashton Winger throws a haymaker back, but he collects him a little bit more at the quarter panel. G.R. Smith had to check up, got back underneath them. They come back into 1 and 2, and Ashton Winger kind of rolls to the bottom to kind of protect the slider. G.R. Smith gets into him, contact made. G.R. Smith gets sideways. The door, right, was perpendicular to the track. So, bam, automatically the yellow flag comes out. G.R. Smith to the back, right?
And
he didn't like that.
And G.R. Smith loses his mind.
Lost his marbles. I mean, we're talking donkey award to G.R. Smith. This dude is batshit crazy, okay? Because the yellow comes out. He catches up to Ashton Winger, drives square into his left ear, spins him out. All right. It's bad enough if you do that one time underneath yellow, but one wasn't enough, right? He spun him out. Ashton Winger stays in the gas, gets back ahead of him. G.R. Smith drives into his left ear again. Then he proceeds to back up and hits him again in the left ear, spins him out again.
And it's like, I mean, and these aren't just little love taps. I mean, he hit him so hard that his nose was crumpled up.
Yeah, it was asinine, right? I mean, just absolutely stupid. So G.R. Smith pulls off the track. Ashton Winger, a lap or two later, I mean, might have been right then, but I think it was a lap or two later, ends up with a left rear flat, either from the whatever, probably from tin and everything getting into the tire. And then after that, they get down in the pits. And the first things first, Ashton's dad went to go after G.R. Smith and got intercepted by his apparel guy, which is like 30. And that didn't look like it went good for Ashton Winger's dad. And then Ashton Winger got into it. Next thing you know, he's laying on his back. Like that, he was not winning that fight, but he ends up in handcuffs. And there's like a full out brawl down in the pits, right? I mean, just, and to be honest, I think Ashton Winger had every right to go punch him in the face, right? I mean, like somebody does that 3 times on a yellow, like what the hell's wrong with you? Using your car as a weapon, that's just stupid. He should be literally kicked out of the place, kicked out of the Southern All-Stars, shouldn't even be on the race, right? So that tells me right there. So normally a person doesn't have that kind of reaction, right? I mean, maybe hit him once or right, show your displeasure, but to drive into somebody 3 times, I mean, he was absolutely lost his shit. Do you think this stems back to last year? Is there more to this than maybe, in your opinion? I mean, speculating here. Is there more to this?
In my opinion, there has to be more to it because in reality, G.R. Smith really doesn't have anything to be upset about based on what took place on the track, because he was the one that initiated it twice where, I mean, Winger, yeah, he did a slide job and I mean, he crossed the nose, but I mean, you know, G.R. Smith, you know, forced it in there 2 separate times and, you know, kind of caused most of the ruckus on the track. Well, then he lost his mind and caused a lot of ruckus on the track.
Right. We speculated last year, right? Because Ashton Winger drove for G.R. Smith last year, and there was an incident on a track. He was battling with somebody for the lead at, I don't remember what track it was, but they ended up making contact. He stayed in the pump, barrel rolls in the back straightaway. He gets out of his car. Him and his dad, evidently dad's got a temper, right? Because dad's been involved a couple different times, right? Dad, settle the shit down, right? Like your kid's an adult, let him fight his own battles. Like that drives me nuts. Let your kid fight his own battles. But they literally got into it. Literally the next week, G.R. Smith fired. They said that they parted ways. I don't know. I mean, if G.R. Smith fired him for that, and then he does exactly the same thing, it's kind of hypocritical. It's just saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, then it was announced today that Peyton Freeman, who was driving for G.R. Smith, he will no longer be driving for G.R. Smith. He probably saw, I don't want any part of this. And
right.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, I don't want to be on episode 7 here of this soap opera. Like I'm out. Like you do you, I'll do me. And I read some of the comments on Peyton Freeman's racing page. everybody on there is like, hey, good for you, great decision. Like everybody, you know, and this stuff happens, right? It's racing, it's high, I get it, right? But 30 years ago, 40 years ago, this stuff happened, right? It did. I heard stories about fist fights all the time. There's camera phones now, right? Everything's recorded, like, and everybody's quick to judge too. Like, oh man, I can't believe that person did it. Well, if people had camera phones from when I was back in the day, probably wouldn't be a very good thing. Or Tom Nesbitt or Rick Eggersdorf. I heard some stories about him. We'll get to next week. But yeah, lots of drama. Maybe it's something at Southern Raceway. I'm not really sure, but they are freaking shit happens down there. It's nuts. So the winners down there, what you call it? Billy Franklin won that first night, and then Joseph Joyner won night number 2. So the racing wasn't all that great, but there's definitely a lot of drama there. So what else happened in the late model world? So at Boot Hill Speedway, did you watch any of that at Boot Hill?
That's the one that Hedgecock won.
Hedgecock won at 411.
Oh, okay. I watched 411. I didn't see Boot Hill.
Boot Hill was pretty good. Okay. That's worth a watch. So these are on Flow, right? So if you have a subscription to Flow, you're going to want to jump on there, go to Boot Hill Raceway. But we'll start with the one that you watched. It was a Tennessean at 411, one of the Ray Cook Spring Nationals events, Schaefer Spring Nationals. And McDowell was leading late. What was it, like 5 to go, maybe? And they had a really good battle. He was kind of running the top. Corey Hedgecock rolling the bottom, and Hedgecock drove by him. He ended up winning. McDowell faded to 4th. That don't usually happen on a slick dry track. That's, I don't know if something broke or what. Ricky Weiss, he raced up to 2nd, but not without a little drama.
Well, yeah, I was going to say Mike Marlar's not going to be sending them a Christmas card this year.
Yeah, his blinker stuck, halfway down the straightaway, and he just automatically turned left because the blinker stuck and drove over Marlar. Marlar was done, and Marlar, he's kind of feisty, he's kind of laid back, but then he's kind of like dynamite in a bottle, and he pulled up next to Ricky, and I was waiting for him to tee him up, but he didn't. But he just drove up next to him and stopped him, and he made darn sure that Ricky Weiss knows that he's not ordering a sniper this week. Okay, that's not happening. Okay, but
did you
dry?
Did you watch the parade laps?
I did not.
I just want to let you know, lug nuts are important.
Oh Jesus, come on now. Who now?
I can't remember his name, but the left front tire came off just as they were starting to go 4 wide.
Unbelievable. So here's the deal. If you're a racer and you had lug nuts come off, my old pit guy, he probably, for the right price, he can probably get her done. We had this conversation. So I was talking to Jim about this whole ordeal with people having tires falling off. He's like, never, ever, ever would one of your tires fall off, because I would torque the tires, then I'd pull the caps off, right, and I'd torque them again. He goes, there's times that I checked them 3 times before you went out on the racetrack. It is unbelievable and unfathomable to me that people actually have tires fall off. I mean,
well, as I've said several times, that was one of my duties to do when I was on MJ's crew, was to make sure the lug nuts were tight before every race. And I'm starting to think that I had a really important job now.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. It makes no sense to me. And there's, people are like, oh, it's the pit lift, because no, you're just an idiot. All right. If you forget to tighten your lug nuts, you're an idiot. It just is what it is. That's just stupidity. Okay. So also in the late model world, Boot Hill Speedway down in Greenwood, Louisiana. Okay. So they had the Ronnie Adams Memorial, a doubleheader down there. And night number 1, I mean, JD was in the house, right? You had Superman there. And a little bit of drama, Bert. About halfway through, I don't exactly know what lap it was on. There's a battle for the lead, right? And I don't remember exactly who the drivers were, right? It's immaterial, but they're battling for the lead, and 2 lappers in front of them get together, spin out. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all stack up because of the lappers, all 4 to the back. Donkey award to any freaking promoter out there that has this stupid no fault caution rule. I mean, Stevie Wonder texted me. He said, the lap cars spun out in front of the leaders and they put the first four to the back. What are they thinking? I'm like, I get it. I don't know. Jonathan Davenport was so pissed. He loaded up. He said, I ain't coming back. Night 2, he went home. He's like, I'm out. This is stupid. And it just drives me nuts. It's like a trigger to me. Like this whole no fault caution, it's a trigger. But remember the old Sham Wow commercial, right? But there's more. Right? Later on in the race, last lap, right? They're battling. Neil Baggett, I think it's Neil Baggett, is leading the feature, right? They take the white flag. They come into 1 and 2. Logan Martin in the 36M dives to the bottom. He realized he wasn't going to make it, so he checks up, pushes, stuffs Baggett into the fence coming off of turn 2 on the last lap. Yellow comes out. Dude, you can't park there. No parking zone. You got to go to the back. The guy that caused it, he gets a spot back, wins the feature. Unbelievable. Now, I talked to Dan, and Dan says, well, there is a logical explanation for that call. This week at Boot Hill, right, they have checkers or wreckers. It's a factory stock race where they actually promote that on the last lap of the race, it's a straight up free for all. You can roll over the leader, stuff them through the fence, run over them, whatever you want to do. It is an absolute, like, wide open, do whatever you want to the leader. Maybe, just maybe, Logan Martin was practicing. Maybe he's going to be there this week. I don't really know, right? Night number 2, Bert, Garrett Alberson drove by Mr. Smooth. Billy Moyer led lion's share of that race, handful of laps to go. Pretty nice racetrack, couple lanes. Alberson drove around him on the high side, put that Black Diamond 58 in victory lane, keeping Billy Moyer at, what is it, 8? Is he at 8:48? I believe he's at. So 8:48. He's 2 away from 8:50, which is another milestone. Not that you need milestones when you have 848 feature wins, but the fact is he kept old Mr. Smooth out of victory lane. So, Jim, I mean, I guess he was closer than Bloomquist to winning this year. I just, we'll say that. So pretty exciting stuff. That's on Flow. You might want to check that out. But there was some racing down in the desert. Been doing some pretty cool stuff. Casa Grande race down there, Casa Grande, which is Central Arizona Speedway. It took a few years off, and this year they've had quite a few races. Mark Dobmeyer, sprint car driver from up in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Very, very good race car driver. Another scary incident. Now, before we get into that, a little shout out here to our new sponsor, right? We talked about chemicals, the right application, right? We talked about, longevity, saving money. Daytona 1 for true performance and beyond, right? So the founder of this company, Bert, okay? The founder of this company is actually in the NASA Hall of Fame. NASA, not NASCAR, NASA, like spaceships, NASA, for lubricants, okay? Guy knows what he's doing, and he has a passion. He's passionate about racing, okay? And he said, we have to find a way to make things last longer. Things shouldn't wear out, right? And one of the first products that we're going to talk about, they have several products, but one of the ones that we're going to talk about that he really wants to showcase is his tire treating products, right? So he has a cleaner for the tires, and then he has some treatment for the tires. Now, you got to clean your tires, right? Because when they have there's stuff in the tires, right? That literally have like release agents. When they make a tire, they spray that release agent. It's like a wax. And what happens is when they pull the tire out of the mold, that release agent's in the rubber. It kind of fills in the pores. Well, that's not supposed to be in there. That's just a product to help get it out of the mold. That's not part of the tire. That's part of the process. So he has a product called Aqua that if you wash your tires with Aqua, it will actually pull that release agent out, right? You apply it on there, you spray it on there, pretty simple process. You keep it wet, you let it soak in, you rinse it off, and it's going to pull that release agent out. Why is that important? Because every racer out there, Bert, that has been racing for a while, they've got on a slick, dry surface, they got their tires nice and warm, there's a long yellow, boom, they glaze over, right? Well, one of the reasons, the main reason they're glazing over is that release agent is coming to the top. It's like a wax and it seals the tire over. You got to get that stuff out. That's not supposed to be in the rubber. That's not supposed to be in there. So you got to get that out of there, okay? So them products are available at a couple different places here. You can call Advanced Performance Technology at 507-828-3536. You can get it direct from him, okay, from Chad. But also our sponsor of the show, and I urge you to call here, Dirt Track Supply over in Watertown, South Dakota. They're going to have these products on their shelf. Get a hold of Trevor. He'll get you the products you need. TRE over in Alexandria, Dave Tennis, he'll have the products as well. Okay. Now, here's the deal. Okay. The other product is this. We talked about the tire cost going up, right, Bert? Like we realize that if they're paying $275 to win, right, or $300 to win, and you have to pay to get in, you have to pay to get there, you have to pay for race gas, and you pretty much expense a tire per night. That ain't a good deal. You win the race, you're losing money. That's just bad math, right? Let me ask you this. I know you're not a racer, right? But I'm going to ask you on a logical question, right? If there's a product out there that literally for $10 a tire, right? Figure about $10, maybe a little bit less, right? But if you could spend $10 and get a second, third, fourth night out of your tire to where that used tire is still competitive with a brand new $160 tire, is that a good deal? Yes or no?
Well, it sounds like a good deal. Yes.
Absolute no-brainer, right? So it's not a tire softener. It's a tire treatment. What it does is there's products there when you treat the tire after you clean it, it fills the voids with stuff that's already in the rubber, right? So I urge you to check it out. We're going to do some testing with it. I'm actually going to be getting together with Chad. We're going to be checking this deal out because I want to see how used tires, I want to see it for myself. And I get to do that here this weekend. I'm pretty excited to kind of see how that works. But I tell you what, some people are like, well, is it legal? Well, if not, it should be, right? Because, if WISSOTA, we'll start with WISSOTA. There's a lot of sanctioning bodies out there. But if they really, truly care about racing, right, they need to find a way to make it to where tires can last longer and still be competitive. That is good for the sport. It needs to happen. And the crate late model class over at Fergus Falls, they actually do that. It's allowed. It's legal in that for sure. They've actually been testing it. And they had some really good results. So there's people using it. They're happy with it. It's proven. And I'm excited that they're part of our team here at the One to Go show. So back over to Casa Grande, Central Arizona Speedway. Now you remember, was it 2 years ago, Bert? Maybe 3 years ago, where Dobmeyer rolled at Cedar and he kind of landed straight down and compressed his back. And what did he break? He broke his neck, didn't he? Broke his vertebrae.
I can't remember what he broke.
Yeah, and he was out for the better part, maybe a year, might have been longer. I'm not really sure. So he ends up going off the track and forth. There's a yellow, and they didn't really show how it happened, but Chris Steppen was announcing down there, and he says, trouble off of turn 4. Sounds like somebody got together with Dobmeyer on the yellow, or maybe at the same time as the yellow. He went off 4. I have no idea how it happened, what happened, but he started on fire. And a couple of the drivers that he competed with, they stopped their cars. They literally got out of their cars. He was able to get out right away, right? He got out fairly quickly, but he was on fire. He's burning. So these other drivers, Bert, got out of their car. One of them was Dominic Scelzi. Got out of his car. They ran over there. They tackled him. They're trying to put the fire out. So that's racers helping racers, right? Dominic Scelzi, young guy from California, he might a little bit know Mark Dobmeyer, but it's not like they race weekly. He doesn't really know Mark Dobmeyer, right? They know each other, but they're not like, pals. They're not racing against each other weekly. But they thought quickly to jump over there and help him. 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his leg, on both of his legs. Sounds like he's going to be out a little while. So, thoughts and prayers with Mark. Hopefully he gets on the mend soon. That's glad it's, not that any part's good, but glad it's his legs and not up where his organs are, face or head or whatever. I'm sure it's a painful deal. Dennis Jones, I remember when he got burnt up in Thunder Bay, and man, that was a bad deal for a long time. So fire's one of them things, Bert. It scares everybody, but I'm telling you, a lot of us didn't really pay attention to safety. Bert, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen racers in various classes, right? Even the higher level class, maybe not Lucas Oil, World of Outlaws, but locally, that they got taped up, torn racing suits. They got like single layer suits that are like 4 years old that literally they might as well be coveralls. They're covered with so much grease. It's like all it takes is one time, right? So drivers, I urge you, like, I get it. I get it, right? I raced forever. I get it, right? Like, you're on a limited budget. People are like, I could buy safety equipment, or I could get more tires or another shock or whatever. I'm telling you what, them tires, them shocks, that extra engine parts, whatever, ain't gonna do you jack shit if you burn up in a fire. Get the right safety equipment, and that's another thing, get a hold of Dirt Track Supply. I mean, he's passionate about it. He'll make sure that you have what you need. There's a lot of places you can get that stuff, but protect yourself. Like, I mean, we can't, as fans or whatever, we can't protect everybody. That there's got to be a little accountability on that. And again, this is nothing new with Mark. I'm sure he had good safety equipment. I have no idea what happened there, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that don't. And if somebody that's racing a sprint car that probably has good stuff, he burnt up, you better look at your equipment, because I'm telling you, you don't want that to happen to you. So pretty scary deal down there. So my dad went down there, Bert, to Central Arizona, and they ran 2 nights down there. And not to get into a lot of the results or whatever, but so Kyle Busch was there. Okay. So his kid raced there both nights. 7-year-old Brexton Busch in the junior sprint car class. They raced on the inside. He's 7. He won night 1, got second night 2. 9-year-old Mike and Iverson from Wisconsin. So Iverson Trucking, they sponsor a lot of stuff, right? And his other kid raced mods. 9-year-old, he actually got second night 1 and won night 2, kind of put it to Kyle Busch. That's pretty cool to see a Wisconsin guy putting it to the NASCAR money. I kind of like to see that. But Kyle Busch raced in the 600 Outlaw Micros, which I think they also ran on the small track. My dad said he ain't seen a crowd like that in forever. So there's a lot of people that I hate NASCAR, right? I don't like NASCAR, right? I hate Kyle Busch. I hate him, right? They absolutely filled the grandstands. Filled them. He said he couldn't even find a place to sit. They had to like create other avenues for people to stand and sit. It was absolutely jam-packed. So regardless of what people might feel about NASCAR, it's still a bigger draw than dirt track racing, even though we love dirt track racing more. So hats off to them guys down at Central Arizona Speedway. They put together quite the early first quarter of 2023 here with some pretty cool stuff down there, and hopefully they continue to do so. So anything else on that? Anything on that safety? Anything that you want to touch on that?
No, I mean, I was going to say this before you said it. Yeah, I mean, you see drivers, especially in like the 4-cylinder division and, some of the quote unquote lower divisions, they're walking around with, used drivers fire suits, and, they're frayed and you can see holes in them. And it's like, don't skimp on safety. Sure, you may never need that suit to protect you from a fire, but that one time that you do need it to protect you from a fire, you want it to protect you from a fire.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm telling you what, one of the scariest things out there for me is fire. So I mean, you got to make sure you're protected.
Well,
so
that's one thing too. I see, drivers will wear the suits, but then I see, well, not a lot, but I'll see some drivers who don't wear fire retardant shoes. They just wear regular shoes and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, MJ was one. He never wore fire retardant shoes.
Back in the day, Bert, I got a picture of my dad racing. They wore T-shirts.
Oh yeah, I've seen a picture of Pete Parker racing with just a white T-shirt on.
Unbelievable, and that's a testament. I mean, this safety equipment has become a thing because bad things have happened to good people for a lack of it. So yeah, pay attention to what you got. We don't want to see people get hurt. I mean, that is the last thing we want to see in racing. So let's get into our weekly pick'ems here, our standings. Kurt still on top at 29. Jeff at 27. I'm at 25. Mike, Kent, and Brad, all three of them tied at 22. Dan at 20. Bert at 15. And not so hot, Carl, at 14. He tied you last week, but you got a point. You got back ahead of him. Carl.
I didn't even know if we had any races going last week.
Yeah, I think we had one. I don't remember what. Yeah, we had one. So this week, Lucas Oil late models already rained out. They canceled. Weather's not looking good. There's at this time we're doing this show. It's Tuesday night. This could all change by the time that it gets posted. I hope not. But Smoky Mountain runs, and then 2 shows at Boyd. So 3 World of Outlaw late model events this week: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe. And then World of Outlaw sprint cars. That's World of Outlaw late models. World of Outlaw sprint cars, Williams Grove and Lincoln. So couple races up in PA, Posse versus the Outlaws. So it'll be kind of fun to see that. And let's get into the last lap. Zuli's Race Engines, will give them a shout out. The Wissota season right around the corner. I tell you what, one thing that I know for sure is you're going to see Zuli's Race Engines in victory lane. You're going to see Zuli's Race Engines competing for championships. All of the above. Why? They're fast and they last. Plain and simple. If you can't beat them, join them. Get a hold of them guys over at Zuli's Race Engines. And a couple things going on this week. Any news from Eastern Wisconsin? Anything over there?
I'll just say this. I mean, I could talk about it next week, but maybe we can talk about it more next week. But on March 25th, I believe that's a Saturday. Shawano Speedway is going to have a preseason fan fest at Fire and Iron in Clintonville, Wisconsin, which is about 20 minutes from Shawano. But the reason it's held there is it's an old Shopco building that Jasper Drangler, who raced at Shawano Speedway at one time, now he's racing. He goes to Africa and races in these rallies and stuff like that. But he owns the building now, and so there's going to be cars on display and go-karts on display, all sorts of things on display. And I know Brad was talking about having a cornhole tournament where a driver is matched up with a fan. I don't know if that's still happening or not, or if that fell through. But
is there a flyer? Do you have a flyer for that?
I do not have one. I'll ask Brad if he had. Well, yeah, I'll get one from Brad, and we can talk about it more.
Yeah, just post it on the page.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll remind everybody next week too. With all this snow we've been having, that might be what we have to look forward to for a little bit. But it could melt really fast if it warms up.
I'm excited to have Brad back there. I don't know who was running it before. And quite honestly, I haven't been to Shawano, but all the years that Brad was running it, he promoted, right? I mean, a lot of the things he did was super cool. So I'm glad to see him back over there in Shawano. You know that place, a lot better than I do, of course, but he seems to do a good job and he's passionate about what he does. So speaking of like activities like that this weekend, over in Duluth, talking about the deck, they have the Motorhead Madness. I don't know if it's at the deck or Amsoil Arena or whatever. You can look online, but Motorhead Madness Saturday and Sunday, the big car show down there. I know a lot of the area racetracks get together, have booths, have schedules, so on and so forth. Race cars typically in there. And we're a week early. Crash's birthday this coming weekend. So my boy Crash, he's in his 80s, still getting around, busted his kneecap. Get on the men there, buddy. But Crash Carlson, one for sure Hall of Famer in dirt track racing for sure. So check that out. We talked about it this Sunday. I'm getting together with Mason over at Rick Eggersdorf's, right? Old Agent Orange Hall of Famer. Gonna have a little sit down with him and be able to kind of bring back some old memories. Super excited about that. Little news in the NASCAR world, Bert. Actually a tie-in, right? Brad, settle down, Brad. We're not talking NASCAR. Okay. Dirt late model guys invading NASCAR. What's going on there?
Yeah, it was announced that Jonathan Davenport is going to be racing a truck in the, or not a truck, going to be actually racing in the Cup Series in the dirt race in Bristol. And also Tyler Carpenter, he's going to be racing a truck, correct?
Yep, he's going to be racing a truck. JD is going to be racing. He's racing a Cup car, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So JD in a Cup car, Tyler Carpenter back in a truck. Yeah, that's good for dirt racing right there. I'm pretty excited about that. Another thing, schedules are posting, right? If you go to Wasoda's Facebook page, Wasota Auto Racing, you go to their Facebook page, they've been posting a lot of the schedules here this week. They started posting. That's like Christmas Eve for me. I mean, I used to get so jacked about that. I remember back when all the dirt, they've gone online now, and which is kind of sucks because I really used to enjoy all the dirt back in the day. But I remember the episode that came out, Bert, that had all of the Wasota track schedules on there. And when I was racing super stocks, I'd write down every single schedule, and I'd have like on a year-to-date calendar, like every single super stock race I could hit. Like I was OCD that way. And so that's one of my favorite times of year is kind of putting that schedule together and kind of see what's going on. And that's starting to happen now. Not a lot of racing this last weekend, a little bit, some pretty good ones. Puka and I watched hockey, Bert. I know Wisconsin. You probably didn't watch any of the Minnesota State High School hockey tournament, but
no, I actually wound up watching. It was a girls' high school basketball tournament in Wisconsin last weekend. Okay. So I watched quite a bit of that.
Yeah. The hockey tournament. One thing that stuck out to me, and all of us northern people, like we hate Edina, but Edina's good. They're a powerhouse. 20 seconds left in the championship game. Double doink. They were down by a goal. One of their players hit the pipe, went straight across, hit the other pipe, bounced out. And I texted Puka. I'm like, that dude is going to remember that for the rest of his life. That is awful. Can you think of any moment in racing, right, to where there's been that, like, just that so close yet so far heartbreak? Like, what is the biggest absolute heart-wrenching thing that you can remember in dirt track racing or whatever that would be comparable to that?
Well, I mean, well, I mean, this wasn't the bad part of it happened after the race, but when Shannon Babb was light at the World 100 that one year.
That's good. That right there is probably my buddy Joel. We were talking about that. I don't know if there's a close second. Well, there's a lot. Everybody's got theirs, but the World 100, that's a good one for sure. So 3 bold predictions to bring her to a close here, Bert. Off the board, you didn't have anything come off the board. There's a few cancellations and whatnot, so you didn't have anything come off the board this last week. Puka did, though. Puka had a couple picks. He had the Warlord Warriors winning the Class A state championship in hockey. Puka, nope, that did not happen. I had Ricky Weiss finishing in the top 5 at 411. He got second. So that was a yes for me. So our standings right now, I have 11 correct, 23 incorrect, 7 still on the board, 32.3%. You have 16 correct, 17 incorrect, 8 on the board, and you're at 48.5. So you're kind of whooping me. And I think as far as the clean sweeps here, where we get the double points, I think you have one of those, and I have 0. Because we've been taking a lot of low lying fruit. We haven't been swinging for the fences. Maybe this week, let's maybe swing for the fences. So let's go with this week's 3. So fans, here's what we do. We pick mostly, as we can tie in some sports. We've done that a little bit, but mostly racing related. But we have three things that we're going to predict that happen. It's either a straight up they did happen or didn't happen. It has to be something where it's not an opinion. Well, I think this. It's either it did or it didn't. And if it's a clean sweep is something that is like a really bold one, we get 2 points for that. We get 1 point if it's just correct. So what do you have for your first bold prediction?
My first one, I believe you've already said it, but I'm going to say it also. David Gravel is going to win the World of Outlaw Sprint Car Series.
All right, we're doubling up. You're kind of okay. You're taking one. That's kind of a cheap move there, stealing. He's kind of blocking me there. All right. I'm going to stick with the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars theme here, and there's 2 races this weekend, and the weather looks like it's supposed to be pretty decent. The Pennsylvania Posse and the World of Outlaws will split this weekend. They're each going to win one. A representative from the Posse and the Outlaws will each win one feature between Lincoln and Williams Grove this weekend. What's your next one?
I will stay with the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars. You want bold, swinging for fences. Brad Sweet will not only not win the championship, he will finish 3rd in the standings.
Okay, now I'm going to clarify. 3rd or worse?
I'll say 3rd.
Specifically 3rd. That is definitely swinging for the fences right there. That is absolutely a clean sweep if you get that one right. So, Jeff, write that down. Brad Sweet is going to finish 3rd in the World of Outlaws. I'm going to go NASCAR. Tyler Carpenter will score a higher finish in his truck race than Jonathan Davenport does in the Cup race.
Okay. All right. And my 3rd one, Mr. Excitement, Terry Casey, will make his late model debut in 2023 at a track in eastern Wisconsin.
All right. You got some insider info, or is that some speculation?
It might be some
We've all heard tidbits. We've all heard tidbits.
It's kind of hearsay insider information.
Right. So there's been a lot of he keeps saying he's going to race, but okay. I'm going to go north of the border. Joel Kreiderman will win at least one modified A main at the Thunder City Speedway in 2023. We're going to go with that. So I kind of changed my tune there on what I was going to go with. Kind of did that on the fly. Speaking of north of the border. So, Bert, episode 168 in the books. So far, Lucas Oil canceled. A little bit of racing to be had here this weekend, but we're not too far away. I would say we're less than a month away from racing in our region somewhere. So I'm excited for that, but huge thanks to all of our sponsors again, and always fun talking racing. Any closing thoughts here before we sign off?
No, just this is a racing show, but actually this weekend I'll be glued to the TV watching NCAA basketball. These next 2 weeks are kind of recliner time to just watch basketball.
Are you in a bracket? Did you get on any brackets?
I am not in a bracket.
Okay. I typically do. Jeff sent me one. I should probably fill that out. Maybe text Jeff if you want to get into his bracket or whatever. We still got time to play. So yeah, shoot him a text in the group. But yeah, I'll be watching that. It's free agency time, right, for the NFL. So that's always fun, kinda. It's going to be interesting to see if Aaron Rodgers and half the Packers organization goes to New York. We're not really sure.
Well, and that's the thing, all of last season, everybody said, well, the Packers didn't give Aaron Rodgers the weapons that he needed. So he wants to go to the Jets with all the weapons that he had in Green Bay.
The dude's lost his mind. I mean, it's plain and simple. He's in love.
Well, and that's why I hope they trade him. I'm just tired of this every year. And well, he'll play for the Jets for 1 year, then he'll be with the Vikings in a year.
That could happen for sure. There's some speculation. So always fun chatting with you. I look forward to visiting again next week. Rick Eggersdorf documentary coming up here this weekend. Excited for that. Thanks for tuning in to the One to Go Show.